Have you ever imagined being thrown to the ground by the person you brought into this world? That Christmas Eve, in front of all the guests, I heard words I never imagined would come from my own son's mouth. He yelled at me, ordered me to leave my own house, and when I tried to defend myself, he pushed me so hard that I fell in front of everyone. The humiliation burned more than any physical pain. But as I stood there, on the cold floor, looking at the shocked faces around me, something inside me changed. I was no longer the woman who would silently accept disrespect. That early morning, I made decisions that would change everything. When the sun rose, he discovered he had crossed the wrong line with the wrong person at the wrong time. The 53 missed calls were just the beginning of what was to come. What he did that night would cost him far more than he could ever imagine. Before we continue with this true and impactful story, I need your support. If you're enjoying this content, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell in the all notifications option. Your subscription costs nothing, but it means everything to the growth of this work. Share this story with your friends and family who also appreciate true and touching narratives. Stay until the end, because the outcome will surprise you. And tell me, from which country and city are you following this story? Leave a comment. My name is Imani, and what I'm about to tell you happened just a few months ago, but it feels like yesterday. Every detail still burns in my memory like a hot iron. Preparations for that Christmas dinner had begun days before. I spent hours choosing every detail, every decoration, every special ingredient. The house glowed with golden lights. The scent of cinnamon and spices wafted through the air, and the table was spotless, covered with the linen tablecloth that belonged to my grandmother. Everything had to be perfect, because it would be the first time the entire family would be together since Marcus, my son, married Vivian. Vivian. Just saying that name made my stomach churn. From day one, I sensed something about her that deeply bothered me. It wasn't just maternal antipathy or jealousy, as some suggested. It was that calculating look, the way she measured every word as if constantly weighing what she could gain or lose in each situation. But Marcus was in love, blindly, completely bewitched by that woman. And I, as a mother, swallowed my reservations and opened my arms, my home, and my heart, hoping I was wrong about her. What a foolish illusion. That Christmas afternoon, guests began arriving around 5 o'clock. My sister Helen came with her husband and 2 children. My cousin Theodore showed up with his new girlfriend. A few close family friends were also invited. The house was full, vibrant, just as I had dreamed. Marcus and Vivian were the last to arrive, accompanied by her mother, Dorothy. When I opened the door and saw the woman standing in the entryway, my heart skipped a beat. No one had warned me that Dorothy was coming. I'd known Marcus's mother-in-law from a few previous encounters, and each one had been uncomfortable. Dorothy had that superior attitude, speaking loudly, interrupting people, and making sharp remarks disguised as jokes. "Hello, Dorothy," I greeted, forcing a friendly smile. "I didn't know you'd be with us today." Dorothy looked me up and down with that characteristic disdainful look. Vivian insisted I come. After all, it's Christmas, isn't it? Family time? The way she emphasized the word family gave me chills, as if she were marking her territory. I let it go. It was Christmas. I took a deep breath and made way for them to enter. Vivian walked past me without even making eye contact, already chattering about something with her mother. Marcus gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, but I could tell he was tense, his shoulders rigid, his jaw set. "Is everything okay?" I asked quietly. "Yes, Mom. Just tired from the traffic," he replied, looking away. Dinner started off lively. Conversations flowed with laughter and funny stories. The children ran around the house with contagious energy. I circulated between the kitchen and the living room, making sure everyone was well served and that no one needed anything. It was my role as hostess, and I performed it with pleasure. Then it was time to sit at the table. I had carefully planned the seating arrangements, Marcus to my right, Helen to my left, and the others evenly distributed. At the opposite head, I left the seat for Theodore, who always enlivened the table with his stories. But as everyone began to settle in, Dorothy walked straight to the chair on my right and pulled it out neatly. "Dorothy, I'm sorry, but this place belongs to Marcus," he said politely. She stared at me coldly. "Vivian told me I would sit next to her." "Vivian's seat is over there." I indicated the chair across the table, where I'd placed a small card with her name on it. I arranged the seating so everyone would be comfortable. "Well, let's rearrange then," Dorothy retorted, not moving. The mood in the room changed instantly. Conversations died down until an awkward silence fell. Everyone stared at the scene, unsure of how to react. "Mom, let it go," Marcus murmured beside me, touching my arm. "Marcus, it's my house. I arranged the seating," I replied, keeping my voice firm but calm. That's when Vivian rose from her chair and walked toward the table with purposeful strides. Her high heels clicked loudly on the wooden floor, each sound echoing like a war drum. "Imani, it won't cost you anything to be flexible. My mom wants to sit here," Vivian said in that condescending tone that irritated me deeply. "Vivian, with all due respect, I organized this dinner and would like the seating arrangements to be respected," I replied, feeling the heat rise up my neck. "You're making a fuss over a chair. Seriously?" Vivian crossed her arms, looking around as if seeking support from the other guests. "I'm not making a fuss. I'm just asking you to respect my organization," I countered, feeling my patience wearing thin. Dorothy stood up then, her expression theatrically offended. "I don't stay where I'm not welcome. Vivian, let's go." "No one said you're not welcome," I tried to soothe, though inside I was seething. "There's a lovely spot reserved for you over there by the fireplace." "A second-class seat, you mean?" Dorothy retorted with venom in her voice. "Mom, please." Marcus tried to intervene, his voice thick with tension. "Your son should teach you manners, Imani," Dorothy snapped, grabbing her purse. "Vivian, dear, we're not going to stay where your mother-in-law treats us like intruders." My blood boiled. "I didn't treat anyone like an intruder. This is my house, and I have the right to organize my dinner however I want." The voice came out louder than I intended. The silence that followed was deathly. Even the children stopped playing. Vivian turned to Marcus, her eyes filled with fake tears. "Are you going to let your mother talk to me like that? On Christmas?" Marcus looked like a cornered animal, his eyes darting from me to Vivian to Dorothy and back again. I saw the exact moment he made his choice, and it wasn't me. "Mom, you're overreacting," he said, his voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. My legs almost gave out. "Exaggerating? Marcus, I just arranged the table seating." "You're being inflexible and rude to my wife's mother," he continued, and each word was like a knife. "Rude? I'm being rude." My voice rose an octave. "They come here, to my house, and they want to change everything I've planned, and I'm the rude one." "Don't raise your voice at me," Marcus retorted, also raising his tone. "I'll raise my voice in my own house whenever I want, Marcus. I'm your mother." "And Vivian is my wife," he yelled back. The air rushed out of my lungs. Helen stood up, trying to approach, but Theodore held her arm, shaking his head. It was like watching a train derail, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. "You know something, Imani." Vivian stepped forward, her face contorted into a mask of anger. "Since day one, you've treated me like I'm not good enough for your precious son. Every look, every subtly critical comment, you never accepted me. Because I know you." The words were out before I could filter them. "I see right through your charade, Vivian. You don't love my son, you love what he can give you." Vivian let out an indignant cry. Dorothy took a few steps toward me, her index finger pointed at my face. "How dare you? My daughter is a jewel, and you are not even worthy to kiss the ground she walks on. Get out of my house, I said, shaking with rage. Now! With pleasure, Dorothy shouted back. Mother! Marcus roared, and the sound was so loud, so filled with fury, that everyone jumped. You've crossed the line. Did I cross the line? She was in disbelief. Marcus, open your eyes. These two came in here and disrespected. Enough! He took 2 long strides toward me. Dorothy can sit wherever she wants. It's Christmas, damn it. A day of togetherness, of family. Exactly, family, and I'm your mother, or have you forgotten? Tears began to burn my eyes, but I held them back with all the strength I had. Vivian whimpered behind him. Marcus, love, let's go. Your mother made it clear she doesn't want us here. We're not going anywhere, Marcus declared, and then he turned to me with an expression I'd never seen on my son's face before. There was something dark there, something cruel. Mom, for the last time, Dorothy will sit in the chair of her choice. You will apologize to her and Vivian, and we will have a civilized dinner. Got it? I'm not apologizing for anything at all, I replied, lifting my chin. Then you leave. The world stopped. The words floated through the air like sharp blades. What? My voice came out as a whisper. You heard me. If you can't behave, if you can't treat my wife and mother-in-law with respect, then you leave the room. I gave a disbelieving, bitter laugh. This is my house, Marcus. My house. I'm not going to... This is my mother-in-law's place, he yelled, with a force that made the glasses on the table vibrate. Get out of here now. Before I could process what was happening, he reached out and shoved me. It wasn't a light touch. It was a violent shove, with both hands on my chest, hard enough to knock me off my feet. I flew backward, literally flew. My feet lost contact with the ground, my arms flailed in the air, searching for something to grab, and then my body collided with the wooden floor with a brutal impact. Pain exploded down my spine, radiating through my ribs and up the back of my neck. My head hit the floor with a hollow, terrifying thud. For a few seconds, I saw stars, bright spots dancing in my blurry vision. Screams erupted around me. Helen ran to me, kneeling beside me. Theodore yelled something at Marcus. The children cried. Absolute chaos had descended on my carefully decorated dining room. But through all that confusion, all I could see was my son, my Marcus, standing there, staring at me on the floor, and in his eyes there was no remorse. There was anger, as if I were to blame, as if I had forced this. Vivian grabbed his arm, pulling him back, whispering something in his ear. Dorothy had her hand over her mouth, but through her fingers I could see a smile. That wretch was smiling. Imani, are you okay? Helen shook my shoulder, her face pale with worry. I tried to get up, but the pain in my spine made me groan and fall back down. Don't move! Theodore! Call an ambulance! Helen screamed. No need, I managed to say, though every word hurt. No need for an ambulance. With Helen and Theodore's help, I managed to sit up. The room spun around me. My vision was blurry, and there was a taste of blood in my mouth. I bit my tongue as I fell. Marcus, what did you do? Helen turned to my son, her voice shaking with shock and anger. You pushed your own mother. She was being impossible, Marcus replied, but his voice was less steady now. His hands were shaking. She provoked it. Provoked? Helen stood up, furious. I don't care what she said. You don't put your hands on your mother. What's wrong with you? Helen, don't get involved in this, Vivian interjected, her venomous tone disguised as calm. You don't understand what really happened here. I saw exactly what happened. I saw my nephew physically assault his own mother. Helen was shaking with indignation. From the floor, still trying to catch my breath, I looked around the room. The guests were frozen in horror. Children hid behind their parents, frightened. The beautiful dinner I had prepared with such care lay forgotten, growing cold on the table. And then my eyes met Dorothy's again. She wasn't smiling anymore, but there was a satisfaction in her gaze that sickened me to my core. She had gotten what she wanted: destruction, chaos, my complete humiliation. Something shifted inside me in that moment. As I lay there, lying on the floor of my own home, humiliated in front of friends and family, a transformation occurred within me. The physical pain was intense, yes, but the emotional pain, the betrayal, the utter disrespect, it was unbearable. And I decided I would no longer be the woman who accepted disrespect. Not from my son, not from anyone. With slow, deliberate movements, I stood up. Helen tried to help me, but I gently pushed her hand away. I had to do this alone. Every inch I gained in height hurt like hell, but I showed no weakness. When I was finally standing, I looked around the room. It was completely silent now. Even the children had stopped crying. "Supper is over," I said, my voice hoarse but firm. "Everyone can go home." "Imani," Theodore began. "Please," I repeated, louder. "I want everyone to leave. Now." People began to move about, grabbing coats and bags, exchanging uncomfortable glances. Some approached to murmur words of comfort or indignation, but I just waved, wanting everyone to leave as quickly as possible. Helen refused to leave. "I won't leave you alone like this." "Helen, please, I need to be alone." I grabbed my sister's hand, squeezing it tightly. "We'll talk tomorrow. I promise." She hesitated, looked at Marcus with such contempt that even he recoiled, and finally nodded. "I'll call you in an hour. If you don't answer, I'll come back here with the police." I agreed, just needing everyone to leave quickly. Marcus was still standing in the same spot, Vivian clinging to his arm like a leech. Dorothy was already at the door, clearly eager to leave and probably already rehearsing the distorted version of events she would tell anyone who would listen. When everyone had left, only me, Marcus, and those two vipers remained. "Marcus," I called, and he finally looked at me. "You three can go too." "Mom, I don't want to hear it," I cut in. "Not now. You've done enough for today." "You're overreacting," Vivian said, rolling her eyes. "It was just a little push." Something cold ran down my spine at those words. She was minimizing, making a physical assault seem trivial. "Get out of my house," I repeated, each word dripping with restrained venom. "Now." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, and opened it again. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Vivian pulled him toward the door. "Come on, love. Your mother obviously needs some time to reflect on her behavior." Her behavior. I had to bite my tongue hard to keep from exploding again, but it wasn't time, not yet. They finally left, and when the door closed behind them, my legs gave out. I sank down onto the nearest sofa and let the tears I'd been holding back for so long finally fall. I cried. I cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the physical pain that throbbed through every inch of my body. But most of all, I cried for the son I had lost, because the man who pushed me that night was no longer the boy I had raised. That Marcus was gone, replaced by a manipulated and blind stranger. After the tears dried, I sat in the silence of the house. The table was still set, the food untouched. Christmas lights twinkled merrily, oblivious to the tragedy that had unfolded. It was then that clarity arrived, like a lightning bolt cutting through the darkness. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just swallow this humiliation and move on as if nothing had happened. If I did, I'd be teaching Marcus that he could treat me that way without consequences. I'd be validating Vivian and Dorothy's behavior. I needed to act, and I needed to act decisively. I got up from the couch, ignoring the protesting pain in my back, and went to my office. I sat down at the computer and began to think, to plan. I wouldn't be impulsive. I wouldn't act out of blind rage. I would be strategic, calculated, precise. Marcus had crossed a line he shouldn't have crossed, and now he would pay the price. I spent the next few hours on the computer, making calls, sending emails, organizing documents. By the time the clock struck 3 a.m., I had a plan, a perfect plan. The first thing I did was call my lawyer. Yes, at 3 a.m. Richard was an old friend and owed me some favors. When I explained the situation, he was silent for a long moment. "Imani, are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice heavy with worry. "Absolute." "Are you aware of the consequences once this process begins?" "Richard, my son physically assaulted me in my own home, in front of the entire family. He chose that woman and her viper of a mother-in-law over his own mother. Yes, I am aware. And yes, I want to take action." I heard him sigh on the other end of the line. "Very well, I'll prepare the paperwork. I can have everything ready by noon." "Perfect." The second call was to my accountant. Gerald wasn't thrilled to be woken up before dawn, but when I explained what I needed, he understood the urgency. "It'll take a few hours to compile everything," he warned. "No problem. I just need it to be complete and irrefutable." "It will be." The third and final call that morning was to Helen. She answered on the first ring, clearly still awake and worried. "Imani, thank God! I was about to go there." "I'm fine." "Helen." "Better than fine, actually." "What do you mean?" "What happened?" I explained my plan, every detail, every step. When I finished, Helen was silent for so long I thought the line had dropped. "Helen, are you really going to do this?" His voice was filled with a mixture of admiration and apprehension. "I go." "And you have no doubts?" "None." Another silence, and then count on me, for whatever you need. We hung up, and I finally let my body rest. I lay down on the living room couch. I couldn't climb the stairs to my room with the pain in my back, and closed my eyes. But not to sleep, to gather strength for the next day. Because the next day would change everything. By the time the sun rose, I was back on my feet, the pain more manageable after a generous dose of painkillers. I took a long, hot shower, letting the water soothe my aching muscles. I dressed carefully. Black dress pants, a crisp white blouse, and a structured blazer. I tied my hair in a neat bun. I applied makeup to cover my eyes, swollen from crying. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. Stronger, more determined, a woman who would never accept disrespect again. At 8 a.m, my phone started ringing. It was Marcus. I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, it rang again. I ignored it, and again, and again. By 9 a.m, I had 12 missed calls from him. By 10, I had 23. He left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. "Mom, answer the phone, please. Mom, we need to talk about yesterday. Mom, I'm worried. Call me back. For God's sake, Mom, just answer it." But I didn't answer. Every ignored call was part of the plan. To let him despair, to let him feel the anxiety grow, because he still had no idea what was coming. At 11 a.m, I received an email from Richard. Documents ready, meeting at the office for 1 p.m. Perfect. At 11:30, Gerald sent all the files I requested, organized in a digital folder with cross-references and explanatory notes. At 12:15, Helen arrived at my house. She hugged me tightly, inspecting my face for signs of weakness. "Are you really okay?" he asked. "I am. Shall we? Let's go." Richard's office was downtown, a sleek glass and steel building. His secretary greeted us with a friendly smile and led us immediately to the conference room. Richard was already there, a stack of documents spread out on the mahogany desk. "Imani," he stood to greet me. "Helen, please be seated." We spent the next hour reviewing every document, every clause, every legal implication. Richard was meticulous, making sure I fully understood what I was doing and what the consequences would be. "There's still time to reconsider," he said at the end. "I won't reconsider. Then sign here, here, and here." My hand didn't tremble once as I signed. Each signature was a declaration, each initial a promise. This would not go unpunished. When we left Richard's office at 3 o'clock, I had 47 missed calls from Marcus. By 4 o'clock, I had 53. 53 desperate calls from a son who was finally beginning to understand that there were consequences for his actions. It was only then that I picked up the phone and typed a simple message. "I'll be home at 5. If you want to talk, come by." The answer came in seconds. "I'm coming." Helen walked me back home. We tidied the living room, still a mess from the night before, and made coffee. I wanted to be absolutely calm and composed for the upcoming confrontation. Marcus arrived sharp at 5. He must have driven like a madman to get there so quickly. When I opened the door, he was disheveled, his eyes red, and his beard unshaven. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Mom," he practically stormed into the house. "Where were you? Why weren't you answering my calls?" "I was in the living room." "Marcus," I interrupted, my voice cool and controlled. "We need to talk." He followed me, and when he saw Helen sitting on the sofa, he hesitated. "Is Aunt Helen here?" "Yes, she is a witness." "Witness? Witness to what?" The confusion on his face was almost comical. "Smell, Marcus." He sat in the chair, fidgeting, his legs bouncing nervously. "Mom, about yesterday, I lost my temper. I shouldn't have. You know I didn't mean to hurt you, right?" "Oh, you didn't mean to." I tilted my head, studying him. "So it was an accident. When you pushed me so hard, I flew through the air and hit my head on the ground." He swallowed hard. "I was nervous. You and Vivian were arguing, Dorothy was upset, and I just lost it for a second." "1 second," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. 1 second was all it took for you to decide to physically assault your own mother. "It wasn't assault. I didn't assault you." His voice rose defensively. "Marcus, you pushed me to the ground hard enough to give me bruised ribs, a bruised spine, and a mild concussion. If that's not assault, then I don't know what is." He paled. "Concussion? Have you been to the doctor?" I did. This morning. I have the medical report right here. I picked up the envelope from the coffee table and placed it on my lap, unopened. I let him just stare at it, wondering what was written inside. "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't think." He ran his hands through his hair in anguish. "You didn't think," I agreed. "You didn't think when you pushed me. You didn't think when you yelled at me in my own home. You didn't think when you humiliated the woman who gave birth to you in front of the whole family. I was wrong, okay? I admit it. I was wrong." Tears began to stream down his face. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please, I'm sorry." It was strange to see my son crying, begging for forgiveness. A part of me, the maternal part that had cared for him his entire life, wanted to give in. I wanted to hug him and tell him it was okay, that we were family and we would get through this. But the new woman born from that humiliation was stronger. She knew that forgiving without consequences would be teaching the wrong lesson. "Marcus," he said softly, "there are consequences for our actions, consequences that don't go away just because we apologize." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I know. I'll accept any consequences. I understand if you need time away from me, as long as you need." "How thoughtful of you," I commented, and there was no warmth in my voice. "But it's not a matter of time, Marcus." Confusion returned to his face. "So, what do you want? I'll do anything to fix this." "Anything." I raised an eyebrow. "Anything," he repeated vehemently. "Great." I grabbed a folder that was next to the medical envelope and opened it, pulling out a sheaf of papers. "Then you won't have any trouble reading this." I handed him the documents. Marcus took them, confused, and began to read. I saw the exact moment he understood what he was seeing. The blood drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. What is this?" His voice came out as a strangled whisper. "It's written right up there. Marcus, it's a formal disinheritance." Disinheritance. He looked at me, at the papers, back at me. "Are you cutting me out of the will?" "Exactly." He stood up abruptly, the papers falling to the floor. "You can't do that." "Yes, I can, and I did. Because of an argument, because of one mistake." His voice was on the verge of hysteria. "It wasn't just an argument, Marcus. You attacked me. You chose that woman and her family over your own mother. You humiliated me in the worst way possible." I stood up too, looking him in the eye. "And you didn't show a shred of real remorse until you found out it would hit your wallet." "That's not true. I called 53 times. "You did. But never in any of those messages did you actually apologize. It was all, 'We need to talk.' I'm worried. Call me back." Like the problem was that I wasn't answering the phone, not that you threw me to the ground. Marcus opened and closed his mouth several times, searching for arguments and finding none. "And there's more," I continued, pulling another set of documents from the folder. "This house, the house where you grew up, where I spent Christmas Eve alone after you assaulted me, is being put up for sale." "What?" His scream echoed off the walls. "You can't sell the house!" "It's my house, Marcus. I can do whatever I want with it." But where are you going to live?" "I've already found a beautiful apartment in another city. I'm moving in next week." "Another city?" He staggered, holding onto the back of his chair. Are you leaving?" "Try." "But the family, Helen, Theodore, they're all here. And everyone supported me in this decision. In fact, Helen is moving with me. She's already asked for a transfer at work." Marcus looked at Helen, searching for any sign that this was a lie. She simply nodded, confirming my words. "You're abandoning me," he said in disbelief. "You're abandoning me because of Vivian." "No, Marcus," I corrected. "We're moving away because you've given us more than enough reason to. And don't worry, I won't tell anyone where I'm living. You won't have my new address." "You can't do this!" He exploded, punching the arm of the chair. "I'm your son!" "And yet you treated me worse than you would a stranger on the street." My voice remained calm, controlled, which seemed to make him even more frantic. "It's done, Marcus. The papers have already been signed and registered. There's nothing you can do to change that." He threw himself on his knees in front of me, his hands gripping my arms. "Mom, please, please don't do this. I'm going to break up with Vivian. I swear, I'm going to—" "I don't want you to break up with Vivian because of me." I gently but firmly pushed his hands away. "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. I want you to learn that you can't treat people who love you like trash just because you're angry or being manipulated by someone." "I learned. I swear I learned." "Good. Then this lesson will stay with you for the rest of your life." He collapsed right there on the floor, sobbing like a child. Seeing my son like that should have broken my heart, and it did. But I was sure I was doing the right thing. There was one more thing I needed to say. The most painful part. "Marcus, there's something else you need to know." He lifted his face, his cheeks wet with tears. "What else? What else can you do to me?" "That's not what I'm going to do to you. It's information you deserve to have." I picked up the last document, the one Gerald had prepared. "Remember when you and Vivian asked me to invest in her company 6 months ago?" He blinked, confused by the change of subject. "I remember. And I said I needed to think, to assess the risks, and you got upset because I was taking too long to decide." "Yes, but what does that have to do with—" "I wasn't lingering. I was investigating." I handed him the document. This is a complete audit of Vivian's company. Marcus took the papers with trembling hands and began to read. As his eyes scanned the pages, I saw comprehension, shock, and then horror dawn on his face. "No," he whispered. "This can't be right." "That's absolutely right. Gerald checked it 3 times. Vivian's company is a front. She has no real customers, no verifiable revenue, and is buried in debt. If you had invested your money there, you would have lost everything." Marcus continued reading, turning pages, the horror growing with each line. She lied. She lied about everything. Try. The investor meetings. She always mentions. Never happened. The big deal. She said she was closing. It doesn't exist. He let the papers fall, his gaze blank, processing the magnitude of the lie. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "I tried, several times, but you never wanted to hear anything negative about Vivian. You said I was being insecure, jealous, controlling. Remember?" He closed his eyes, more tears streaming down his face. "And there's more," I continued, mercilessly now. "Dorothy isn't the successful businesswoman she claims to be. Her consulting firm went bankrupt 3 years ago. She's living on credit and loans from loan sharks. Why do you think she was so interested in sitting at the head of the table at Christmas? She was assessing the value of my house, my belongings. They're both hunting for fortunes, Marcus, and you were the prize." Marcus stood there, kneeling on the living room floor, his world crumbling around him. Everything he thought he knew, everything he had defended so vehemently, was a lie. "You can keep these documents," he said, gesturing to the papers scattered on the floor. "Or not. You can stay with Vivian and pretend you don't know anything. You can believe the excuses she'll inevitably make. It's your life, your choice." "Mom?" His voice was broken, destroyed. "But my decision stands. You are no longer in my will. You will not have my new address. And if you ever decide to seek help, work on yourself and truly understand what you did wrong. Maybe, and I mean maybe, we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But it will be on my terms, in my time." I walked to the door and opened it. "Now, I need you to leave. I have a lot to do before the move." Marcus struggled to his feet, gathering up the papers from the floor with trembling hands. He walked to the door like a zombie, stopping beside me. "I'm really sorry," he said, and this time it sounded genuine. "I messed up. Yes, it's broken. Will you ever forgive me?" "I don't know, Marcus. I honestly don't know." He waved slowly and left. I watched him get into the car, sit behind the wheel without starting the engine for several minutes, his head resting on the steering wheel. Finally, he started the car and drove away. I closed the door and turned to Helen, who had been silent throughout the conversation. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I am," I replied, and it was true. There was pain, yes, sadness, mourning the lost relationship, but there was also strength, conviction. "I'm fine." The following days were a whirlwind of organization, packing decades of life into boxes, hiring a moving company, finalizing the house paperwork. Each task was a step toward a new beginning. Marcus tried calling a few more times in the first few days, but stopped after realizing I wouldn't answer. Vivian appeared at the door once, furious, demanding to know what I had done with Marcus. I shut the door in her face without a word. A week after the confrontation, I received a text message from Marcus. It was long and detailed, explaining that he had broken up with Vivian, that he was in therapy, and that he was trying to understand where it all went wrong. I didn't respond, but I kept the message. Helen and I moved to our new city on a sunny Tuesday. The apartment was smaller than my old house, but it was mine. A space free of painful memories, a place where I could start over. 2 months passed. Theodore visited us a few times, bringing news of the family. Marcus was actually in therapy. He had completely distanced himself from Vivian and Dorothy. He was trying to rebuild his life, step by step. "He asks about you every time we talk," Theodore told me. "He wants to know if you're okay, if you're happy." "And what do you answer?" "That you look great, better than you have in years." And it was true. Without the weight of that toxic situation, without the constant tension, I flourished. I made new friends. I started a painting class. I traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, but never had the courage. There was no longer room in my life for anyone who didn't respect me. And that included my own son, until he proved, with actions, not words, that he had truly changed. 3 months after moving in, I received a letter. Not an email, not a text message. A physical, handwritten letter, stamped and everything. It was from Marcus. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. When I finally did, I found pages and pages of handwriting I knew so well. He wrote about regret, about therapy, about how he was learning to recognize toxic behavior patterns. He wrote about how he had been manipulated, but that this did not excuse his actions. He took full responsibility. On the last page, he wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to let me back into your life, but I want you to know that I'm working on myself, not because I want anything from you, but because I realized I became someone you didn't recognize, and someone I don't recognize. You taught me to be better than that. I failed you, but I won't fail myself. I will be the man you created me to be, even if it's too late for you to see. With love and eternal regret, Marcus." I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would be. But it was a start. Months turned into a year. Marcus continued sending letters, one a month, always handwritten, always respectful. He never asked for anything. He simply shared his progress, his reflections, his growth. Helen thought I should at least respond. "He's really trying," she argued. "I know," I replied, "but that doesn't erase what happened." "It doesn't erase, but maybe they can build something new." "Maybe. But in my time." And then, the week of the second Christmas after that fateful night, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store, buying ingredients for a simple dinner I was making with Helen, when I heard a familiar voice. "Mother." I turned and there he was. Marcus, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but there was something different in his eyes, something more mature, wiser. "Marcus." My voice came out surprisingly calm. Theodore told me which market you frequented. I didn't come stalking you, I swear. I'm just visiting him for a few days, and I thought—" He stopped, realizing he was speaking too quickly. "Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you." "I'm not scared." We stood there in the organic produce aisle, the shopping cart between us like a physical barrier. "Are you okay?" he asked finally. "I am. And you?" "Better. Not perfect, but better." He hesitated. "Did I get my letters?" "I received. And did you read them?" "I read them all." Hope shone in her eyes. "That means—" "It doesn't mean anything yet," I cut in gently. "It just means I read it." Hope dimmed, but he nodded understandingly. "Okay, sure." I watched my son stand there, vulnerable, hopeful, yet respectful of my limits, and I felt something stir inside my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was the beginning of something. "Marcus," he said slowly, "if you're free tomorrow, you can come over for dinner. Helen will be there too. We can talk." His face lit up in a way he hadn't seen in years. "Seriously, are you serious?" "I am, but I need to be clear. This doesn't mean everything is forgotten or forgiven. It's just dinner. A conversation." I understand. I'll accept anything you're willing to give." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." I gave him the address and the time, and then continued my shopping, leaving him there in the hallway, clearly trying to process what had just happened. Dinner the next day was awkward, tense at first, but gradually, as we talked, really talked, without yelling or accusations, I began to see the son I'd lost emerging again. He talked about therapy, about the terrible things he'd learned about abusive relationships and manipulation. He talked about how he was rebuilding his life, working a new job, making new, healthy friends. And he apologized. For real this time. Not a quick excuse to make things go away, but a deep, detailed apology where he took full responsibility for every action, every word. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said, echoing the words of the letter. "I don't think I deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that every day I wake up trying to be better. Not for the inheritance, which I know I lost and accept. Not to come back into your life, though I want that more than anything, but because I realized I've become someone horrible and I don't want to be that person." Helen and I exchanged glances across the table. We saw sincerity in her eyes, heard genuineness in her voice. "It will take time," I said finally. "A long time, and we may never have what we had before again." "I know." "But," I continued, holding his hand across the table, "we can try to build something new, something more honest, stronger, if you're willing to work at it." He squeezed my hand, tears flowing freely now. "I am. I'll do anything." And so we began, slowly, carefully, rebuilding a relationship that had been shattered on a terrible Christmas night. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, difficult moments, painful conversations, but Marcus remained committed, and gradually, very gradually, I began to trust him again. As for the disinheritance, I stood by it. It wasn't about money or property. It was about principle, about showing that actions have lasting consequences. Marcus never asked to reverse the decision. In fact, he said it was a necessary reminder of how low he had fallen. 2 years after that fateful night, Marcus and I had a new kind of relationship. It wasn't like before. It never would be. But it was honest, based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. He had become the man I always knew he could be. And me? I became the woman I needed to be, one who accepted no disrespect from anyone, not even those she loved most. A woman who knew her worth and demanded that others recognize it too. That Christmas night changed everything. 53 unanswered calls were just the beginning. But from the chaos, the pain, the destruction, something stronger was born. I was born a stronger ME, and if I had to do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. Because sometimes, to save the ones we love, we must first teach them that they can't destroy us.